Yo, what up, YouTube? It's your boy RJ, and today we got our Vilturmites Evil by New Obsessions. I just ran across this video and I was like, okay, this seems pretty interesting, so I want to react to it with the bros, with the fam. So I'm reacting to it with y'all. So let's go. Let's see our Vilturmites Evil. Well, they are, but let's see.
Probably wondering why this is even a question. Of course they're evil. But in episode 2 of the newest season, we get a flashback to Nolan's childhood and a look into the culture of the Viltrumite Empire. And it's about what you would expect, but it paints us a much clearer picture of why the Viltrumites are the way that they are. In this video, I'm going to break down Viltrumite culture, the cycle of abuse that their society creates, and the argument of nature versus nurture to try and figure out if the Viltrumite race truly is evil or just products of their environment.
You forgot, didn't you?
It is your day of adulthood.
If you survive.
I didn't forget, Mother.
Before we can answer this question, first we have to try and understand who the Viltrumites are. And the most important thing to understand is that for Viltrumites, strength is the only thing that matters. Their entire society is built on this idea. If one is not strong, then they do not deserve to exist. And we see this idea clearly put on display during Nolan's adulting ritual.
Yeah, okay, and I did want to say something about this. To me, like, yes, I understand that this is your adulting ritual for your 18th birthday or whatever, but this is one of the craziest things as a ritual. Just think about that. Just think about, like, if you turn 18 on the day you turn 18, your parents just pop up out of nowhere and they just say, alright, we about to beat you down for your 18th birthday, and only if you survive. Not only if you survive, you will be an adult, but also in this fight, we're not holding back. We're quite literally going to try our hardest to kill you. And if you survive, you're an adult. If you didn't, you're weak.
Where parents test their children's strength in an all-out fight that either ends with the child having proved their strength or in their death. Now, this ritual may seem cruel, and I mean, obviously, it is to us, but to Viltrumites, it isn't cruel. It's actually that...
Which makes sense, because that's the only way they know. Think about this, though. Like, you really gotta sit back and think about it. Think about the fact that, like, if you were born, whether that's your parents being born or as you being born, and all you have been taught since the day you were born, since the day you could talk and learn how to walk, all you have been taught that the right way for us to live is to be violent and conquer and be strong and take over others and show them how weak they are compared to our race. That's all you've been taught from pretty much the day you was able to walk and talk. So when you really sit back and put it like that and think about it logically, is that really like, are you really evil? Because it's like, that's all you know. Other people may think it's wrong. Other people may think you're crazy for doing something like that. But it's not to you, because that's all you know. That's what you learned and what you know since the day you were born. Yeah, excuse me, y'all. But yeah, that's how I feel about it. Because it doesn't make... It's crazy, but it's not crazy at the same time. But it makes sense.
I'm expressing a sort of fucked up love in their own way. Basically, if a Viltrumite cannot survive the adulting ritual and dies, then that is actually considered mercy. Because to them, a weak existence is not an existence worth living. And no Viltrumite parent would force their kid to endure a life like that. This also explains why Nolan's mother is so ruthless during this fight. Because of her child...
I mean, yes, it does, but at the same time, she went crazy. Like, she went all out. Like, at least by the end of it, his father showed more sympathy than his mother, and his mother basically disowned him and his father at the same time in one sentence.
If the child is weak, then that reflects on her, making her look weak as well. This also explains why his father, while still brutal, shows some level of restraint, being able to recognize Nolan's strength and accepting him as a Viltrumite. It's clear that Nolan in adulthood resembles his father, strong but compassionate. Nolan was able to hold on to these values instilled in him by his father even through all the Viltrumite conditioning and brutality. Despite Nolan's rock-hard exterior, we do see some sort of connection there. When his father dies from the Scourge virus, this clearly affects him. It leaves a sort of wound, which Mark is able to reopen during their confrontation in Season 1.
What will you have after 500 years?
I hear you, Dad. I still have you.
This trauma that Nolan holds inside may have actually been the reason that Mark was finally able to get through to him in the end and change his path.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Speaking of Nolan's trauma and the Scourge virus, I want to point out how brilliant of a weapon it truly was to use against the Viltrumites. While obviously it was super effective on the Viltrumites physically, it wasn't just designed to target Viltrumite DNA, but also their entire belief system. The Viltrumite general illustrated this perfectly.
Someone dares to strike at us with a coward's weapon. Good. You will only make us stronger.
How can one truly...
Well, it didn't make you out that much stronger because it affected you and it took you out, didn't it, buddy?
call themselves strong if they fall to something as weak as an illness? I'm willing to bet that the reason this virus was so successful against them is that their pride and ego wouldn't have even allowed them to fear it at first. They would have believed, at least in the beginning, that anyone who succumbed to the virus was just weak and didn't deserve to live anyway. But then it kept spreading and suddenly their strength didn't matter anymore. So not only did Thetis manage to kill and weaken them with the virus, but he also took away something much more important: their identity. The Scourge virus wasn't just a weapon, but it was psychological warfare at its highest level. But the Viltrumites' obsession with strength didn't just create strong warriors, but it created something else entirely. At its core, Viltrumite society is just one massive, never-ending cycle of abuse. The adulting ritual is just that, a ritual. Nolan's parents had to go through it, so it's only fair that their son does too. Now, Nolan and Mark's relationship is vastly different than Nolan and his parents was. Nolan actually tried to break this cycle, but once Mark got his powers, he realized how weak he was compared to other Viltrumites. This is why he was so hard on him during the Season 1 finale, and why we got lines like this one.
Your life has been soft and painless. You're a Viltrumite in blood only. Well, your true education begins now.
Their fight was Mark's adulting ritual, and even if Nolan didn't realize it, he was continuing the Viltrumite cycle of abuse. But are we really any different from the Viltrumites? We see this in real life all the time.
Yeah, we do. Okay, let's see the points.
Well, my dad beat me, and it turned me into the man I am today, so...
That makes sense. That now, when you think about it in that form, that makes more sense. Although it's wrong, obviously it's wrong, but it makes sense.
I'm gonna beat you. It's the same logic with the Viltrumites, just scaled up to a cartoonishly evil level. Viltrumites spend their entire childhood being abused by those far stronger than them, with no chance to fight back. Then they're released upon a universe full of beings who are just as powerless against them as they were. This is common in real life as well. Not all of them, but some children who are victims of parental abuse can turn into bullies themselves. Viltrumites basically created this perfect pipeline of abuse victims to the most fucked up superpowered bullies in the universe. They believe that if you're strong enough to take something, then it is yours by right. Just listen to the mantra that every young Viltrumite is taught from birth.
That is why the universe is our right and destiny. If we did not deserve it, we could not take it.
All is ours!
All is ours.
And we see this mantra illustrated in how they treat the other races. At the end of the day, though, the Viltrumites have brought all this violence upon themselves. They are their own worst enemy. The Coalition of Planets and the Scourge virus were created in direct response to the Viltrumite threat. There's a reason why Nolan is so against this use of the new Scourge virus. His trauma and his own children aside, he just doesn't want to see the cycle of violence continue. Nolan has a line when talking to Thetis that I think goes deeper than most people realize.
Do you know what you did? How many suffered and died?
Now, obviously, he's referring to the billions of Viltrumites he saw fall to the virus, but I think he's also referring to the Viltrumites' newfound rage at outside races. They were already cruel, but after the virus, there was absolutely no room for leniency to anyone outside the Viltrumites. Leniency to other races would mean the literal death of their species. The survivors would have had to turn downright fanatical if it meant that they were to survive. Nolan wants to end this cycle. But the worst part is that we see this cycle of violence continuing through Mark. Ever since that fight with his dad, he's becoming more and more violent. He's begun to fight more like a Viltrumite, more brutal.
And that makes sense, and you start, like you said, you start to see that in fights. And when you really sit back, like, you may not really like how more violent Mark is, or you might not like how more not caring he is, but again, that makes more sense when you sit back and think about it. It's really just his Viltrumite blood, or whatever, his Viltrumite DNA taking over him a little bit more.
And more efficient. First, it was Angstrom, then it was Conquest, and in Season 4, he almost killed the guy that turns into Dinosaurus. He beat Titan in the same way his dad beat him, and then obviously he killed Russ Livingston in cold blood. Now, you can argue that...
But, again, you can always think about the fact that technically with Russ, he was controlled by a scourge, or whatever you want to call it. And the barrier that they had, that the Guardians or whoever, or the GDA put up to keep the Scourge, the Scourges, or whatever you want to call it, in the dome, they were literally breaking down that dome, and that dome was literally on 1%. And of course, with Bulletproof being a lot slower than Mark in flight and just pretty much everything, Bulletproof was so slow, it took him, it seemed like it was taking him forever just to get to Mark. Mark, and the dome was on 1%, so I'm on Mark's side, because Mark literally did not have any other way or any other choice but to do that. And you sit back and think about it. So and then you kind of have to sit back and ask yourself, if you were in that situation and you were a hero, and the person that was supposed to be breaking that disruptor quite literally was so slow to you, and was taking forever, and it was in the dome with 1%, what else would you have done? You would have done the same thing.
In all of these situations, Mark was justified, and I'm not arguing with that. All I'm trying to do is point out the fact that Mark is becoming more and more violent. He's becoming more and more Viltrumite.
They shouldn't matter to me.
That doesn't mean they should die.
You don't understand! I'm not supposed to feel this way! How is this better?
And now we move on to the biggest question of the video. Are Viltrumites just evil by nature, or are they conditioned to be that way? Physically, they're obviously...
When you really sit back and think about it, if you want a more simple answer and a quick answer, they're just conditioned to be that way. Their mind have been trained from day one to be that way.
Very different from us, but mentally they're the same. I've heard people theorize that Viltrumites literally don't feel emotion, but that is clearly not true. Nolan proves this theory wrong. I mean, even Conquest proves this theory wrong. They all feel emotions even if they don't want to. The show has been...
Yeah, they just try to hide it. They're just very good at hiding it. Because just like you said, even Conquest has said before in him in Mark's first fight that he's very lonely, and all the other Viltrumites are scared of him, so he's alone. So he's pretty much alone.
Spelling it out to us from the beginning that the Viltrumites' way of life is flawed. They're conditioned to believe that emotions are weakness, and weakness gets you killed. So instead of allowing themselves to deal with these emotions, they just bury it all. And they end up coming out in the only way that their society allows: violence. I believe this is why Nolan is changed so much by his time on Earth. He finally is in an environment where emotions are accepted and understood, not as weakness, but as strength. Mark's true source of strength isn't his Viltrumite DNA, but his passion. His love for those around him is what makes him truly... The idea of unconventional love is so foreign to Nolan that it almost broke him. It basically contradicted what he has been taught his entire life. It's no surprise that his first taste of love caused his entire philosophy to crumble. It showed that he had a choice, and there were other ways to live besides the cold, distant life of a Viltrumite. And once you realize something like that, there's really no going back. So that brings me to another question. What can change the nature of a man? And the simple answer to that question is anything. Anything can change the nature of a man. Yeah. Anger, fear, regret, or the most common one, love. We see Nolan affected by all of these things, and it's clear that he is nowhere near the man that he used to be. Look at how he was training the kids on Viltrum compared to how he trained Mark in the beginning. Before Earth, he was a conqueror. He probably killed millions of people across the universe without a second thought. But on Earth, he was a father, a husband, and even a friend to some. And that answers at least one of my questions. Viltrumites are not born evil, at least just as much as humans aren't born evil. They're shaped by their environment and their experiences. But that still doesn't remove responsibility. They are still responsible for the choices that they make. It was just orders. This is something that we hear Nolan say, and something that has been used as an excuse all throughout history. But this argument just never holds up, because at some point, the responsibility has to fall on the individual. Yes, Viltrumites are indoctrinated from birth, but they still have a choice. We see that with Nolan and Thetis. Both of them choose to do something different, which means that others could too, but they don't, because it's easier than trying to accept that they're wrong. So are Viltrumites truly evil? Let me know down in the comments what you think. But for me, the answer is, it's complicated. They've all committed evil acts, there's no denying that. But they also come from a culture that encourages these acts from birth. Their culture is built on strength, violence, fear, and survival. But characters like Nolan prove that you can change, no matter how deep in you are and how much time has passed. There is always a chance for redemption. And maybe that's the real tragedy of the Viltrumites. Not that they're evil, but that most of them will never realize that they don't have to be. Okay, if you made it this far into the video, I just want...
Alright, y'all, so that was the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. But to answer the question, I mean, as simple as it can be, yet I feel like no, Viltrumites aren't necessarily evil. They're just simply just bred and taught that way. Like I said earlier in the video, they're just simply bred and taught that way from the very beginning. That any other type of emotion or any other type of act besides strength is weakness, and strength overpowers anything that is weak. That includes love, grief, fear, sadness, all that, or whatever you want to call it. So no, it's kind of like it's almost like a mix-up, like a toss-up. Like yeah they are, and yeah they not. Because again, like you said, even the Viltrumites feel emotion. They have a choice, and you can clearly see that Thetis and Nolan have made different choices. Like you said, it's just with the other Viltrumites, it's simply just a lot easier to just follow orders rather than carry out your own emotions or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, let me know what you guys thought down below. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a like, comments, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know what you want to see me react to next. I'll put the link to the original video down in the description box below. And yeah, with that being said, it's me, boy, and I'm gonna catch y'all in the next one. Peace.